Daudt is introducing House Concurrent Resolution Number 1, a House Concurrent Resolution relating to Minnesota's peacetime emergency, terminating the peacetime emergency pursuant to the authority granted under Minnesota statutes, Section 12.31, Subdivision 2, Paragraph B. New moves that the rules be so far suspended that House Concurrent Resolution Number 1 be now considered and placed upon its adoption.
Representative New.
Let's try that again. Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. The motion is to suspend the rules to take up the to take up the bill to end the governor's emergency powers. This is like Groundhog's Day. We've been here every month doing this since March. And yet very little has changed. Almost nothing has changed. Interestingly, at this point, and this is the argument I've been making for months, COVID is serious. We've had 200,000 Americans die of this. It's very serious. It's something that, that has required a lot, both of individuals and families and governments. It's required a huge amount of sacrifice from a lot of people. And yet here we are again discussing whether or not it is still an emergency. And as I was preparing for this, I looked, I wanted to refresh my memory on the emergency powers and on the governor's executive orders. And, we were here just a month ago having this same conversation, discussing the fact that, well, this is serious, it is no longer an emergency. That is our position. This is no longer emergency. It's serious, not an emergency. That was a month ago. And yet, we continued the emergency powers, the emergency declaration. Interestingly, not a single executive order has been made in that time. Not a single one. At least not COVID related. Certainly there are some public safety issues related to potential riots and unrest that we've seen. There have been some executive orders regarding that, but that's not related to the COVID peacetime emergency. Although also certainly worth a conversation that we are not having in a serious way in this chamber. But there's not been a single executive order in the last month. In fact, the last executive order made regarding COVID was made in August, almost 2 months ago. Almost 2 months ago. And still legislators in the House, our Democrat colleagues, are unwilling to stand up and say, we're ready to do our dang jobs. So here we are again, having the exact same conversation again, asking that we be allowed to do what we were elected to do. Now, interestingly, we've actually put a ton of time into this. We've put a ton of time into reviewing all of the executive orders, making a plan, figuring out what does need to continue, because there are a lot of good things that have happened through the executive orders that certainly we can have stop on day one. I mean, if we end the emergency orders, we need to have an off-ramp on some of the stuff. We need to continue some of the things that have been done. We need to be prepared. But good news, we have been doing our jobs. We are prepared. We are ready to stand up. We're ready to lead. We're ready to do our jobs as legislators. It's frustrating. We talk to our constituents all the time about this. All of us are hearing about what's happening when it comes to the emergency orders and the governor's emergency powers. This is a conversation that all of us are having almost daily with our constituents. And they'll talk to us about different things they're seeing in the data and whatnot. But they ask us questions because they believe that we as legislators have more information than they do. But we don't. We know exactly what the governor chooses to tell us. That's what we know. And unfortunately, the governor has not chosen to tell us anything that he hasn't told the public on his ever-changing dashboards and what he is choosing to share with the public and how he's choosing to share it with the public, just to make that a little bit more confusing for everyone following along at home. We are ready to do our jobs. And the fact that we right now are actually having a vote on suspending the rules, we're not even having a vote on the emergency powers right now. We're not even having that vote. We are having a vote on suspending the rules. All we are asking for is an opportunity to take a vote, to stand up and say we're ready to do our jobs as legislators. Again, Madam Speaker, this is Groundhog Day. We've done this every month. We do this every 30 days. I don't need to sit here and rehash all of the arguments that we already know to be true. So with that, I would encourage you members to take the vote, have the courage, suspend the rules. Let's have a real conversation, and let's take a real vote on whether or not it is reasonable to continue the emergency powers or to accept the fact that we as legislators signed up to do a hard job and we should do that.
The member from Blue Earth, Representative Munson. The member from Carver, Representative Nash.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. And members, seems that Representative New and I were working from the same playbook. I too looked at the number of executive orders that had been issued since the last time we met, and it comes to the sum total of 0. And I've asked you this question a number of times. When are you going to vote to make your election certificate relevant again? That's the question. The question is, are you of the mind that you have the capabilities and the capacity to come down here on a regular basis to perhaps address an emergency of any kind? Could be something new in the future, or it could be this one. And again, I do believe that we have the capacity to be here. We have been meeting via Zoom, so you could do your legislating from home, but we have the ability to address this emergency right here, right now. Let's put it to a vote. And I agree with Representative New. So far, we've not even put this to a vote. We've just not voted to suspend the rules. I would encourage you to find the courage to vote to move this forward to an actual vote where we talk about whether or not you're willing to end the peacetime emergency. It's pretty simple. Everybody says out there on TV or in the newspapers or as you go to the grocery store, oh, I heard they wouldn't vote to end the peacetime emergency, and I have to correct them. I say, no, they didn't even let it get that far. They didn't even let it go that far. They refused to put it to a vote. It was a procedural move. So after I describe that, they make some comments that talk about bravery. Members, you know, we're inching closer to Thanksgiving, and I've used this example, but I'm going to use it one more time. You know, as a kid, I remember not being invited to the adult table for Thanksgiving dinner. We were at the kiddie table. And as I've said before, we're not even at the kiddie table as it relates to fixing this problem. We are in the garage with the Jell-O salad that your mom puts out there to keep cool because in November it's cold outside. That's how far away we are from actually making a change. So I would encourage you to remind yourself that in your office you've got a picture of, or you've got your actual election certificate. Make the best of it, make the most of it, use it today, and stand up and say, I want to have the debate, and I am willing to vote to end the emergency powers. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
We'll try again. The member from Blue Earth, Representative Munson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I believe this is the 7th time we've voted to take up a resolution to end the peacetime emergency, to end the governor's superpowers. Our constitutional rights are continuing to be arbitrarily infringed, and we don't have a clear objective or evidence that it's necessary. Yet we're told that we're selfish if we question the governor's response or the consequences it's causing. You know, the governor wants to unilaterally control all the decisions in our state without question, but he takes no responsibility for the negative consequences his orders have had in our state. It's 213 days that the governor has unilaterally took power away from the legislature and declared himself the only person able to single-handedly write laws and spend taxpayer money in Minnesota. Now, once again, as the governor unilaterally extended his power for an additional 30 days, he's justified his actions through the fear of, what if, calling this virus unpredictable. The implication of his statement is just plain false, and it inspires fear. The actual data on hospitalization rates and death rates does not support the extension of his power. So he again reverted to fear to justify his actions. And we know much more about this virus than we did back in March. And the facts and evidence have shown that the virus to just be far less deadly than originally thought. And the vast majority of cases are able to be managed and treated at home. But fortunately, our understanding of the virus is growing. And we know that the vulnerability to death from COVID is like more than 1,000 times higher than in the old and infirm than in the young. In fact, for children, COVID is less dangerous than many other harms, including influenza. And we should be using our knowledge about this virus to change the course and guide our policies to combat COVID. The governor originally justified his orders by telling us that 74,000 people were going to die from the virus in Minnesota. And if we did the shutdown in our state. And if we continue to follow the governor's fear-based logic of what if, then there's always going to be the next what if. And there'll never be a time when we should relinquish his unilateral control over the state, and we'll continue to fail to change the course and the balance of our public policy approach for COVID. Now, things can continually change in Minnesota because of this. We see all these detrimental effects of what the governor has done. And I've had conversations in the last couple of weeks with constituents still frustrated about the governor's shutdown of our state. And this is now beginning to affect so many more businesses are closing, and people that go in for lines of credit from the bank to actually help keep their business afloat, or restaurants that want to open up another restaurant, or people that want to open up a hair salon are now being questioned by their banker of if they can survive without income for 6 or 8 or 12 months for their business. No longer is a business plan sufficient to show and project income for their business, but now we have to account for this political risk, this tyranny of the governor to shut someone's business down from a unilateral decision through no fault of their own, and they have to accomplish some goal of being able to survive without income for a half a year. Or they build their business plan and their business model based on their size of their restaurant and how many customers they can have and how much income they're going to have and their expenses. They have to show that they can survive with 25% capacity for their customers. So this political risk for terminating is now going to be part of the business plan that people have to show to get credit, to actually start a business. This is why we're going to have more businesses leaving the state of Minnesota, because the political risk in Minnesota is too great to do business here. We can stop that by ending the peacetime emergency and actually sending legislation to the governor, changing the emergency powers so that we no longer have this risk of a complete takeover of our economy by one man making decisions for all Minnesotans. And this is why it's so important to vote for this resolution today to end the peacetime emergency. So please at least vote to take up this resolution. so we can have a discussion and then vote to end his emergency superpowers. Thank you, Madam Speaker and members.
The member from Waseca, Representative Petersburg.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and members of the caucus here, or the House here. You know, over the last few times, I haven't really said anything about the emergency powers. There have been a lot of other people that talked, and I think it's important that we hear from everybody, at least in regards to their own perceptions. And one of the things that disturbed me was those that had voted to maintain the governor's authority has defined myself, not specifically, but anybody who wishes to eliminate the emergency, as if we believe the pandemic was over, and how dare we think that's the case when when people are still getting sick. Well, that's far from the truth. In my opinion, the reason for ending the emergency is because the emergency was really designed as being more of a procedural emergency. It's designed, his powers were given to do procedural things that can't be done because the legislature wasn't in session or because it would take too long to get the session started and moving. That's no longer the case. Today, the executive orders that he's pursued, probably the last 30 or 40 of them, could easily have been done by the legislature in a special session and called forward. I don't believe that the emergency powers was designed to bypass partisan involvement and partisan representation. I don't believe it was designed just so that one person in one party could have control over the entire government. If that was the case, then the emergency powers would have no end, and we would be without a job because somebody else would be making those decisions for us. I was represented to represent my district in all of the regulations and laws that are necessary that impact them. And right now, we're not getting that representation. We're not getting that opportunity to have input at all. Furthermore, as somebody who has dealt with budget deficits in a large dollar budgets as well, there will come a time in which we will need to have some sort of predictability into the future about when this emergency is going to end. How are we going to ramp it down? How are we going to step back from that? And until that happens, we are going to be just always shooting in the dark. And right now we know that the information that we've gotten early on with the modeling and so forth has not been as accurate as we would like. And so therefore it becomes into question exactly what the future is going to look like here in the state of Minnesota. So until we figure out how we're going to ramp it down, we're going to have a heck of a time trying to figure out what we're going to need to shoot for next year for our budget. I'm sure even MMB is trying to wrap its head around exactly what's going to happen. Now, they have smart people there too. The point is that we collectively are smarter than any one of us. And it's time for us to also know that the governor, and collectively with the legislature, is going to be smarter than just he by himself. It is time for us to consider how we deal with the challenges we have in front of us. How do we manage the concerns of the health and welfare of our constituents? How are we going to support and protect our vulnerable, which are getting sick and much more deadly with this disease than others? And how are we going to manage the risk of the unintended consequences? It seems like right now our whole intent is we need to eliminate anybody from getting COVID-19 at all costs. But there is cost to that. There is unintended consequences. And that we aren't discussing because we are so mindset into just keeping everybody from getting sickness. So I think it's time for us to start having discussions, real honest debate. I'm willing to work with anybody who's willing to really start thinking about where do we go from here? Where can we work with the governor? What ideas do we have? I'd love to see the information that he has that we can actually debate and talk about. So I'm asking that you please vote with us to suspend the rules so we can have that conversation. I thank you, and I believe that we have a great opportunity for us to grow here in Minnesota. I will end with this. It's something that I've told other people, and that is right now a lot of us are dealing with fear. And what is the fear? It's the fear of the what ifs. And so what I say is this: if you're afraid of the what ifs, how will you ever be able to enjoy the what could be's? And I think it's time for us to start looking at the what could be's instead of always fearing the what ifs. Thank you, members.
The member from Dakota, Representative Mason. Representative Mason.
Madam Speaker, members, some of the past comments have been really hard to listen to and certainly hard to believe. In my opinion, passing the bonding bill is our job, yet we didn't pass it in May and we haven't passed it in the several sessions we have had so far. This to me is irresponsible. And then when they're talking about emergency powers, this means you have to be really quick and adept. Certainly this legislature right now is not adept at getting the important stuff done. And given the views of and behavior some of our federal officials, I'm hearing that most people are really grateful for Governor Walz and his level-headed behavior. Again, let's get the job done that we were elected to do, the bonding bill. Then we can deal about some of the extra things that need to be done. And goodness knows, Minnesota is in a good state right now compared to some of our surrounding states regarding COVID. So people have a trust in our governor, and it's important for us to make sure that they have a continuing respect for the legislature and governor of Minnesota.
Representative Jurgens.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to talk just for a minute about the realities for businesses as a result of the governor's emergency powers and executive orders. On August 27th, we all received a letter that there would be increased compliance checks at bars and restaurants. A week prior to that letter, before we were informed, before the businesses were informed, there's a bar and restaurant in my district that received an unexpected visit from Minnesota OSHA. Somebody had contacted OSHA and said that there was a mask violation at the restaurant, and so OSHA went in to inspect. They didn't find anybody that day without a mask on, but a bartender was wearing a mask that had been acceptable in the minds of the business owner and other bars and restaurants. The inspector said, I'm not sure if that's compliant or not. The business owner said, willing to have the bartender change the mask. And the inspector said, no, that's not necessary. But when she got back and did her paperwork, she determined that the mask was non-compliant and leveled a $7,000 fine on this business. Now, this business isn't thumbing its nose at the executive order, ignoring social distancing, refusing to wear masks. They're trying. They're trying to stay afloat. And they get hit with a $7,000 fine for an improper mask? Now, they're contesting it now, and I'm not going to mention their name because it's still a process that's ongoing. But what's really troubling is nobody asked for COVID. The governor certainly didn't. We know that. And it's policies put in place for safety reasons that first shut down bars and restaurants and then allowed for curbside and takeout only. And these businesses did the best that they could to accommodate. And then the policy allowed for 50% capacity. And when the governor issued that, I remember him saying, I don't remember the exact words, so I'll paraphrase, but it was to educate, not punish people. It was to hand out masks, not fines. And when this government agency had the opportunity to work with the business, to help them, to educate them, they didn't do that. They hit them with a fine instead, kicking them when they're down. And so this is personal to me. It's personal to businesses in my district all over the state of Minnesota. These are the realities of what's going on. These agencies have the opportunity to help the businesses put in place, answer their questions, put in place the policies that they need to keep their employees safe, to keep their customers safe. And the businesses are trying. The proper response, in my mind, to that would have been to just tell them that mask isn't compliant. Change it and wear a different one. But a $7,000 fine? Minnesota OSHA, which is a state agency under the Department of Labor and Industry, has a chart on their website determining how fines are determined. And it appears from this chart that the maximum fine is $7,000. So I envision a construction site. You've got a worker that's hanging off the ceiling or off the roof, doesn't have a safety harness on, holding onto tools or other materials that aren't tethered, and people walking below them. That seems like a dangerous thing, right? That seems like a potential hazard. That's a $7,000 fine. Now, if you're wearing an improper mask, is that equivalent? Madam Speaker, members, this is the reality. You know, these businesses that are trying their hardest to stay open, watching the days get a little bit cooler, the outdoor seating that they have is going to be coming to an end, wondering if this 50% capacity, is that going to get dropped down to 25%? During these summer and fall months, that's when they build up their nest egg to get them through the winter months, the slower winter months. If they don't have that nest egg, then what? We're at risk of losing the heart and soul of some of our downtown areas, some of our small towns. That's the reality of where we're at today. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The member from Scott, Representative Cantrell.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, members. Today, we yet again consider whether or not to end the governor's peacetime emergency authority. It is worth noting that we are having this conversation as all of our neighboring states are experiencing dramatic increases in their COVID-19 positive test results. Indeed, we need only look to our neighbors to the east in Wisconsin, the only state in the country in which there is not an active peacetime emergency of some variety, to observe the fate that would befall Minnesota were we to eliminate this critical tool today. In Wisconsin, where many of my family members live, there has been, unfortunately, a significant increase in the number of COVID-19 cases, accompanied harrowingly so by hospitals now reaching or surpassing their patient capacity. We do not have to wonder what if in Minnesota. Madam Speaker, this virus is not distinguished between party lines or geographic differences. It is unyielding, and its transmission and devastation rely upon elected leaders like ourselves succumbing to partisanship rather than continuing to stay the course in the interest of mitigating loss of life and tragedy in our state. The Peacetime Emergency Authority is indeed an important tool to address a challenging crisis, and it is imperfect. However, it remains the best tool at our disposal to empower our state to orient with agility around the ever-changing dynamics of this pandemic. The legislature alone, quite simply, as Representative Mason stated, is not structured to address a crisis such as this in a manner that best serves the people of Minnesota with immediacy that is sufficient. The legislature, however, continues to function effectively, and our role is a check on power. I know that I have been in continual contact with the administration regarding feedback I received from my constituents since the beginning of the pandemic, and I have been heartened by their responsiveness and willingness to be partners in implementing our state's evolving response to the COVID-19 public health emergency. To eliminate the peacetime emergency today without suitable or well-articulated alternative would only jeopardize the health, safety, and immediate and long-term economic security of our fellow Minnesotans. Eliminating the peacetime emergency will not make the pandemic go away, nor would doing so aid our state in fully and permanently resuming our way of life before COVID. I urge my colleagues not to further endanger the lives of our essential workers like my mom, who works as a nurse in Shakopee, or my uncle, who works as a teacher. Our essential workers have sacrificed and continue to sacrifice greatly, as have all Minnesotans. May we endeavor to navigate through this public health emergency in the spirit of working for all of our constituents, for all Minnesotans. This is a point of higher calling in the long course of our legislature's history. May we dispense ourselves of partisan posturing and resolve to support the well-being of Minnesotans rather than undermining all the progress that we have made as a state. In no other country on earth, with case numbers like ours, is there a serious conversation occurring as to whether or not this is an emergency. I reiterate, as I have stated in past special sessions, that Americans are prohibited from traveling to many countries around the world because the rest of the world recognizes that this is indeed an ongoing emergency in the United States. The governor also is not working unilaterally. We are still passing bills, and we are still responding to the concerns of our constituents. I am still using my election certificate to fully represent the people who I have been entrusted to serve. Finally, I will remind members that the peacetime emergency does more than simply permit the governor to issue certain executive orders that are vital for helping our state to adapt to this pandemic in real time. The peacetime emergency has enabled us to expand our testing capacity statewide, to grow our hospital bed capacity, and to make critical mental health services and other health services more accessible through telemedicine. These are to name but a few of the benefits that have come from the peacetime emergency. The people of Minnesota are counting on us to do the right thing here. Today, in the interest of serving the stability of our state, the right thing to do is to vote against this motion to suspend the rules. And finally, in closing, Madam Speaker, I pray for my constituents and for the people of Minnesota. I know that we will get through this and emerge stronger, not as Democrats or Republicans, but as Minnesotans who care deeply for one another. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, I urge a no vote on the motion.
The member from Douglas, Representative Franson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I kind of had to laugh when I heard Representative Juergens talking about his constituent being fined with an improper mask. So I have my mask on, and I was wearing the same mask that I wore the last time, and I was informed that I would not be recognized unless I had switched masks. I don't have another mask because it's the only mask I like to wear. And so I turned it inside out. Now, I don't really know if that's real proper. I'm guessing it's not really a proper way to wear a mask, is to wear it inside out, and then you're breathing in what you're supposedly being protected from. But anyway, can't really talk with it on right now. My anxiety is getting to me over this whole situation. But
Representative Franson, we have clean masks, and we can bring you one.
But I stand before you to speak for those that cannot speak for themselves today and that we are hearing through social media and emails about what this lockdown is doing to them.
Representative, go ahead.
On May 29th, there was a CNN headline that says, "Critics say lockdowns will be more damaging than the virus. Experts say it's a false choice." Coming from
Madam Speaker, point of order.
Representative Becker-Finn.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Point of order under section 121, section 2, no person shall participate in conduct that disrupts or disturbs the orderly proceedings of the body. I'm concerned about the staff that are standing near the speaking person.
Representative Becker-Finn, are you raising a point of order about the mask or lack thereof? Representative Becker-Finn, Representative Nash spoke without a mask and nobody raised that point of order. We are bringing Representative Franson a clean mask so that she could choose to use it. I would respectfully request that members keep masks on at all times. I know you might not feel like you need it, but I will let you know that there are several members and staff who would feel a lot better and do believe that you need it. So we have delivered a clean mask to Representative Franson. Representative Franson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. If I was at a restaurant, I would be able to sit down without a mask on. There is nobody around me. But science says now at a restaurant that we can have up to 10 people at a table sitting down next to each other, not wearing a mask. And if we are in a bar table, science now says that we can have up to 4 people together at a table. There's nobody around me at my desk. We can pretend I'm at a restaurant all by myself. Back to what I was talking about, to the CNN headline. In London, CNN, is the damage caused by the lockdown worse than the virus itself? That is a question raised by some world leaders and commentators who claim that economic and social hardship caused by strict coronavirus restrictions places a heavier burden on society than the death rate caused by the disease. These lockdown skeptics point to the tens of millions of U.S. jobs lost in an economic downturn not seen since the Great Depression, the warning by the European Commission of recession of historic proportions, and the Bank of England's fear that the British economy is facing its worst crash in 3 centuries. These arguments are unconvincing, say economists. To fix the global economy, fix the global pandemic, they add. Survey data shows that the U.S. economy was winding down even before U.S. states were mandating stay-at-home policies. Fear of the virus means people were shopping less, small businesses were closing and cutting employment. What I think the skeptics are missing is this wasn't some left-wing conspiracy to stop the economy from working. This was middle-aged people like me who didn't want to see their parents die. Charlie Robertson, chief economist at investment bank Renaissance Capital, told CNN. Alex Turner Cohen at the news.com.au. This is just recent. The World Health Organization has backflipped on its original COVID-19 stance after calling for world leaders to stop locking down their countries and their economies. Dr. David Nabarro from the WHO, the World Health Organization, appealed to world leaders yesterday, telling them to stop using lockdowns as their primary control method of the coronavirus. He also claimed that the only thing lockdowns achieved was poverty, with no mention of the potential lives saved. Lockdowns have just one consequence that you must never ever belittle, and that is making poor people an awful lot poorer, he said. On the opposite end, it was just reported that some of our rich are getting richer. Elon Musk is up $76 billion this year. Jeff Bezos of Amazon, $73 billion. Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook is up $22 billion. Eric Yuan from Zoom is up $21 billion. Bill Gates of Microsoft is up $11 billion. Larry Page of Google, $7 billion. Jack Dorsey of Twitter, $6 billion. I think that's Reed Hastings of Netflix is up $2 billion. Meanwhile, the people in my district and across the state are going into poverty. We are being led into poverty by these lockdowns and by the policies put into place. Goes on to say, we in the World Health Organizations do not advocate lockdowns as the primary means of control for the virus. Dr. Nabarro told the Spectator, the only time we believe a lockdown is justified is to buy you time to reorganize, regroup, rebalance your resources, protect your health. Workers are exhausted, but by and large, we'd rather not do it. Dr. Nabarro's main criticism of lockdowns involved the global impact, explaining how poor economies have been indirectly affected. We are not a poor economy, but we are being led into poverty. His message is timely in a world first. A number of health experts from all over the world came together calling for an end to coronavirus lockdowns earlier this week. They created a petition called the Great Barrington Declaration, which said lockdowns were doing irreparable damage. As infectious disease epidemiologists and public health scientists, we have grave concerns about the damaging physical and mental health impacts of the prevailing COVID-19 policies and recommend an approach we called focused protection, read the petition. Current lockdown policies are producing devastating effects on short and long-term public health. Here in our state, KSTP reported on October 9th, 2020, 52% of restaurants, bars will close in 4 to 6 months if restrictions are not eased. On October 9th, Governor Walz did, quote unquote, ease some restrictions. Instead of having 4 people at a table, or 6 if you're related to one another, you now can have up to 10. I don't know when the science changed on that. I haven't seen any peer-reviewed journals that said, oh, 10 is now, you can have more than 4 at a table, or more than 6 if you're related, because science says you'll be okay. I haven't seen those peer-reviewed articles, but I'm assuming it's just going on feelings and control. Same thing for the Minnesota High School League. Parents all over the state petitioned us to do something about having their kids be able to play sports. Well, then a lawsuit was filed, and all of a sudden, well, the kids were able to play some fall sports. Then parents wanted to see their children participate in sports. They wanted to see volleyball games and gymnastics games, and so the lawsuit was amended. Well, I guess the science changed there too, because now science says, well, what was deemed dangerous the day before, now you can have 2 people watching the athlete, for a survival rate of 99.92% outside of long-term care. Over 5 million people, my friends, have recovered from COVID-19. 0 to 19 age group, 99.97%. In the 20 to 49 age group, 99.98%. In the 50 to 69%, 99.5% survival rate. At the 70 and older, 94.6%. The life expectancy in the US per the CDC is 78.7. The life expectancy in Minnesota is 77.9. We have the 3rd highest life expectancy in the nation. The probability of death in long-term care with a positive death, or with a COVID positive death, is 28%. The probability of death everywhere else with a COVID positive test is 0.06%. We need to focus saving lives in long-term care, because if they get sick, it's almost a death sentence for those in long-term care. Governor Walz needs to own up to the fact that his policies are killing more people in long-term care. The rest of us are being punished with a 0.06% chance of dying from or with COVID. 0.06%. Democrats and those who have been psychologically abused by government are acting like we were meant to live forever. But in case you did not know, Ponce de Leon did not find the fountain of youth, but I guess today's generation would never know, since today's teachers are into wokeness and indoctrinating our children with dangerous Marxist propaganda. But I digress. Government cannot control a virus. A virus is going to virus. And since the mask mandate has been put into place, cases have risen. They have not gone down. Since the mask mandate was put into place, COVID cases are up 60%. Daily positivity is up 14%, and daily deaths are up 27%. According to the CDC, 70% of those who came down with COVID-19 symptoms have been wearing a mask. I have been seeing religious mask wearers not even wearing their masks properly, constantly touching their face, taking off their mask and laying it on the table. On Thursday, I was at an event where a religious mask pusher took her mask off and laid it on the floor, a floor where people walked around with dirty shoes. When the function was over, she then picked that mask up off the floor and put it on her face.
Representative Winkler, for what purpose do you rise?
A point of order, Madam Speaker.
State your point of order.
Madam Speaker, yesterday evening you issued a decorum memo directing all members present in the chamber to wear a mask at all times. Earlier during this debate, Representative Nash spoke briefly without a mask on the floor and no point of order was raised. Representative Franson is abusing that mild discretion that was provided, and she should put on a mask if she wants to continue her debate.
Representative Franson, thank you very much. Representative Franson.
A virus is going to virus. You know what has changed, though? How strangers treat one another due to government psychologically abusing people. Stories upon stories of people being screamed at for choosing to exercise their liberty by not wearing one. How fitting. Or how about this one from a concerned individual in Swift County? We all got a copy of this email, I believe, on October 10th. The individual writes, "My daughter and my mother are medically exempt from wearing a mask. My daughter was raped when she was 12 years old, and now she suffers from PTSD. She is unable to wear face masks and has issues with face shields. They cause her to have panic attacks. Her school told her that she had to have some type of face covering or she had to do distance learning. Why should her education be hindered due to something that was no fault of her own? She does wear a face mask at school, but is struggling with her grades. She has to concentrate so hard on staying calm and not having a panic attack that she is unable to concentrate on the teacher, therefore missing a lot of the daily lesson. Is that fair? I don't think so. Members, public, kids are suffering. Many have lost the will to do well in school. They are treated like lepers. Around the state and around the country, we have people committing suicide, relapsing, or turning to drugs and alcohol to self-medicate, overdosing, and dying because Democrats refuse to end peacetime emergency powers for a virus with a survival rate in Minnesota of 99.92% outside of long-term care. If they can force you to quit your job, stay home, not visit your loved ones in a nursing home, and ban family gatherings during the holidays, stay 6 feet from one another, wear a mask, and threaten you with fines and jail time if you don't comply, what else can they do to you? Last Monday, I received an email at 10:58 p.m. I read that email at 11:02 p.m. as I was brushing my teeth. Headline read, "Heavy Burdened Constituent." And it was terrible. I was brushing my teeth, as I said, at 11:02 p.m. I responded at 11:03 p.m. and said, "I'm still up. Here's my number, call me." And he did. But the email said that he had received news from his wife that after working 15 years at Fairview Hospital, her job was being eliminated with 899 others due to a revenue loss of $163 million in 2020. He was appalled to say that the continuous abuse of power that has cost thousands of Minnesota families their livelihood. He says he honestly doesn't know how we're going to afford to pay our bills and mortgage. This is the real issue that we are dealing with. People are hurting across the state of Minnesota, and we are driving them into poverty. The $4.7 billion deficit that we have now is going to look like a walk in the park when we come back in January. There's going to be major difficult decisions being made. In New York, the Governor Cuomo wants a bailout from Washington because he says he's not going to cover the deficit, that Washington needs to bail him out. Washington cannot bail us out. The federal government cannot continue to print money to bail us out. That debt is going to our children, and if you have grandchildren, they will be paying it. We have to do the right and responsible thing and get our economy going. That is the best way that we can get ourselves out of debt. People deserve to live a dignified life and be able to provide for their family without government forcing edicts upon them and saying, no, you can no longer work anymore. People are hurting. And these policies are driving Minnesotans into poverty, and that is shameful. I ask that you vote in favor of suspending the rules so that we can move on to the discussion of ending the peacetime emergency powers. Thank you.
The member from Olmsted, Representative Liebling.
Madam Speaker and members, I do feel like it is Groundhog Day. Unfortunately, this is the way we have Chapter 12 structured, in a way that the governor must renew it every 30 days. And so members are called back into session to vote again on whether to continue the emergency. I have been taking some notes as members have been speaking, and I would just, rather than restate a lot of what's been said by my colleagues, I would just simply like to go through and respond to a few of the comments that other members have made. So, first of all, I think it's important for us to recall what we are doing here today. We are not here to decide whether we think there is an emergency. Many of us do think there's an emergency, but the question before the body is whether to continue the what is called a peacetime emergency under Chapter 12 of the Minnesota statute. And Chapter 12 does not define emergency as such. So whether a member wants to call the situation we're in now an emergency or not, that is not really the question that we have to answer. So under Chapter 12, it says that a peacetime emergency may only be declared when an act of nature or some other kinds of things endangers life and property, and local government resources are inadequate to handle the situation. So I don't think there's really any question, and I haven't really heard any debate to the idea that there is no longer a danger to life and property, or that local government resources are now adequate to handle the situation. So again, while members may want to dispute whether this should be called an emergency, that in fact is not the question that the body must answer. Another thing I'd like to respond to is the allegation that keeps coming up, that came up, I think, in probably every other debate that we've had, about whether we're allowed to have a debate on this topic. Members are saying that because the vote is a procedural vote, that somehow we're not allowed to discuss whether the Chapter 12 powers should be continued. That just astounds me, members, because listen to the debate we've been having. The idea that we're not really having the debate right now is just not true. We're having it, and nobody is putting a muzzle on any member. Members are making the argument now that whether the emergency should be continued or not continued. So I just always find that astounding, that members are somehow alleging that the majority, by not voting to suspend the rules, is somehow muzzling them from making the arguments that they want to make. So I'd like to go back now. Just in the beginning, a member argued that we need off ramps, that there are factors or things that the governor has used Chapter 12 power to do that should be continued. And I agree with that. I agree with that. And that this could be done by statute. And I agree with that as well. The problem is that no member, or the member who made that statement, has not come forward with any bill to provide for those off-ramps, to provide for the continuation of those items that the governor is now doing. The argument that the governor hasn't done anything new in the last month or two in terms of new orders, to me, it's neither here nor there. We still need a mask mandate. We still need to regulate the size of gatherings. We still need to make sure that restaurants and bars, which are known hotspots, by the way, that there is known higher transmission in certain locations and certain activities, we still need regulation in that area. And so it's very easy to say, oh, get rid of the emergency orders or get rid of the Chapter 12 power, stop using it, without actually providing for what happens next. So I just find that a very interesting argument. I'm just looking at my notes here so that I can respond to a few items. So the argument that was just made, obviously there's a lot of feeling about what's happening in the state, what's happening to the economy, and we all share those concerns. I agree that what is happening in our economy is terrible. It's terrible. And I'm glad to hear Representative Franson talking about the billionaires who've made additional billions during this pandemic. That is something that we should address. And we in Minnesota don't have all the tools to address that. But certainly when the pandemic, whether the pandemic's over or not, in January when we come in, I would argue that we should try to take through taxation some of those extra gains and use them to meet the needs of our people. But I agree, the best thing we can do, the very best thing we can do is get our economy started again. I think we all believe that. The governor believes that. So at the same time that Representative Franson seems to be ridiculing the idea that there's a somewhat arbitrary limit of 10 people at a table or 2 spectators at an event, or, that these things aren't, that there's no hard science around a certain number, she misses the point. She misses the point. The point is that the governor is trying his very best to balance keeping Minnesotans safe with keeping our economy going. This is not something that any of us have ever done before. We now have somewhat over 6 months of experience with this. I, like Representative Cantrell and others, have been involved with the administration, have been getting information, have been asking questions. It astounds me to hear members say that they're somehow cut out from information, unable to get information. I wonder then if they've asked for it, because it's been shared with me whenever I've asked, and with other members as well, my counterpart in the Senate. We meet frequently with members of the administration, with members of the Department of Health to get our questions answered, and with members of the Department of Human Services. So we are involved. But yes, Representative Franson, there is a problem. There is a big problem with the economy. And the problem is, yes, shutdowns are really could be used, should be used on a short-term basis to get the pandemic under control when we don't have yet a vaccine. When at the beginning we had no treatments at all. Now the death rate is lower because the treatments have gotten a little bit better as the scientific community's learned a bit more about the disease. But the problem is you can't have it both ways. You can't say, oh, the governor shouldn't set this limit on restaurants, but the economy should open. And if he sets this limit, he shouldn't, this limit isn't well supported. He's trying to strike a balance so that the economy can stay as open as possible while people stay safe. And the problem is that when the idea of masks is politicized, and when we exercise this grievance politics, that everything's bad, everything you're doing is bad, you can't do right, what we're doing is sending a message to Minnesotans to not comply, to not do their part. And this prolongs the problem. So for a long time, we've been getting emails from people about how wonderful South Dakota was. Oh, it's remained open. And how wonderful it is that these other places have not had mandates. Well, look what's happening. Look what's happening. The case numbers are going up exponentially in those places. Their medical resources are becoming overwhelmed. And this is a very bad thing. And with these states are all around us. We are not an island. We're doing a little bit better than they, but people cross freely over the border. We don't have a wall. Maybe we should build a wall on the border with South Dakota and have South Dakota pay for it. I don't know if that would help, but we have no walls around our state. And the problem is that if people don't hang together and take this seriously, it makes it much, much harder to get through it. It prolongs the pandemic. I know that the governor does not want to keep renewing his emergency powers. And I think I'm pretty safe in saying that not one representative or senator wants those emergency powers to continue. But that represents tools that we must have in order to keep people safe. Now, I want to address for a moment this issue about deaths. And we've been through this all before. Again, it is Groundhog Day. But the more we learn about this virus and the more scientific evidence there is about the virus, there are better treatments, as I said, better management, no real treatment as such yet. But one thing that we are learning and understanding is that this virus can have long-term serious health impacts on people who survive it. So you may have what appears to be a mild case of this virus, and you may then find that you have heart defects that we don't know, but could impact the rest of your life. And this can happen to people of any age. So this idea that somehow, if we just all forget about worrying about the virus, we'll just all go out and get it, it doesn't matter. No, because we are potentially then allowing people to be exposed to something that could change the shape of our population, could change our entire future with regard to people's health. I wish we knew that wasn't going to be the case, but there are some pretty serious impacts out there that we're starting to hear more and more about. So the idea that we need to try to stay as safe as we can, try to keep each other safe until we have what we all hope will be the ultimate solution, which is a vaccine that works. A vaccine that can be taken by enough of us so that this virus, this coronavirus, will not represent the public health threat that it does now. So I think Representative Franson is correct. Government can't control the virus, but people can. People can. Government can provide leadership and support. But if all of us don't take it seriously, don't provide leadership to each other, encouragement to each other, it makes it that much harder to get our economy going again. That's the problem that we have. Survival rates are not the issue. I wish they were, but they're not. That is only one issue. Only one issue. So we need to hang together, folks. And let me just talk for a moment about what Representative Jurgens brought up about his story about a restaurant and a fine that's been given and so on. I don't have all the data in front of me, but the problem that we have when we talk about a case like that is that when the agencies of government give somebody a ticket, impose a fine, they are not at liberty to discuss the details until all of the procedures have gone through. On the other side, the injured party, the person with the grievance, the restaurant, can go out and say to the public whatever they want. So it's really difficult. You know, we hear this, what sounds like a terrible story, but I have been hearing from the Department of Health and other departments about how much energy they've put into educating, giving warnings, coming back to check, helping businesses to try to comply, because it's in all of our interest to be able to have our businesses be open, but also to have, not only to have people really be safe when they're there, but to have the public feel that they will be safe. If I don't feel safe going into restaurants, then I'm not going to eat there, whether they're open or not. The same thing is true with one of the things the Department of Health does is inspect restaurants for foodborne illnesses and that kind of safety, kind of the garden variety restaurant inspections, right? And restaurants might sometimes think that's unreasonable too, but we've all accepted that. And the reason that I think it's become so acceptable is that we all want to have a level of comfort that we can go out to eat and not be poisoned by the food, that there's a level of sanitation that is enforced across every eating establishment. And that ultimately is to the benefit not only of me, the consumer, and you, the consumer, but all of the businesses that are involved. It gives consumers confidence that they can go and partake and be safe. And that is what we need as well in this era of COVID, where people do catch COVID in indoor settings where there are a lot of people, where alcohol is being served, people have their inhibitions lowered, they are less careful, and people are catching COVID in these settings. So it makes sense. And it's really, you know, I can't weigh in on this exact dispute that Representative Jorgens was talking about, but I think we all need to take a deep breath and understand that this will be worked out in the proper way, and that our agencies are not trying to punish our businesses. They are trying to make it fair, make it a level playing field, because so many of our businesses are complying. And they all need the public to feel confident that they can go and partake of what is there and be safe. And if we're not sure of that, it hurts them all. So I think it's really important to respond to that. So members, I've been talking a long time. I'm gonna stop now, but I just want to say in closing that I continue to feel that Governor Walz has done as good a job as can be done in these circumstances. Not a perfect job. We all do need to stay in there, stay engaged, keep advocating for situations that come up, for our constituents to be their eyes and ears in this very difficult situation. It is a difficult situation. Representative Franson, none of us likes wearing a mask. There are situations where for some people it's more difficult than for others, but none of us wants to do it. but we're doing it because we want to help our fellow citizens. We want to do it because we want to get the economy open as quickly as possible and to allow what's open to stay open. So, folks, I beg you to continue to give them, or to start to give a message to your constituents that this is the right thing to do, to help each other by wearing the mask, by complying, and by letting you, their representative, know if there's some issue or concern that needs to be responded to, because our agencies and our governor have been very open to doing that. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The member from Stearns, Representative Tice. Representative Tice.
Thank you. I'm really glad to have this opportunity today because I think that what Representative Mason, Representative Cantrell, and Representative Liebling all bring to the point of why we're trying to get this resolution heard on the House floor to suspend the rules. Because a lot of what I'm hearing today is what we're hearing in the metro area. We're not hearing it in my district because my district is not okay with the way things are going. We really feel like our voices are not heard. One of the things I will tell you is that my senator and I do a weekly meeting with a lot of the folks in our area just to find out how they're doing. And what we hear over and over again from our police chief in Way Park is that, guess what? Suicides are up. Drug addiction calls are up. People are not dealing with this well. There's also another man that I talked to who is from the correctional facility. And we did really well for a long time. And then we didn't. Then he had 62 cases, just like that. They were able to have him secluded, so it didn't really go any further than that. But my question to that gentleman was, how sick were they? His reply, most of them didn't even know they had it. And the other half or so, they had a cold, little aches and pains, nothing serious. But we don't talk about that a whole lot. So when people talk to me about so-and-so has COVID or this or that or another thing, I always ask, but how sick are they? Yes, I know there are folks that get really sick. My pharmacist was one of them. He was in the hospital for about 6 weeks. And he's still struggling with his voice and trying to get that back from having a ventilator on. I know it happens. But statistics show that that person that ends up that sick is a very small portion. One of the things we also hear about are the folks in the nursing home. I was really surprised. My uncle, 89-year-old uncle, lives in my hometown in senior housing. Not even assisted living or the nursing home, but the senior housing is attached to the nursing home. My mom and he, brother and sister, they're on the other ends. My uncle is the oldest and my mom is the youngest. And the middle sister passed away in June. And he would not make that decision to go to her funeral because he couldn't stand quarantine in his apartment for 2 weeks. What does that do to the mental health of our folks? I'm so concerned. He's 89. He's in wonderful health. But what we're doing to them, is it really worth it? I'm not sure a lot of people say it is. And that's what I'm hearing. That's what I'm hearing. And that's what we're missing in bringing these stories, these comments, what we hear from our constituents to the legislature. When you say that the governor listens, I will say he does not. I have heard from many constituents who have contacted the governor's office, and guess what they hear? Crickets. No reply. They don't feel heard at all. And that's why every month we go through this, because we keep saying the same thing. Maybe your constituents love all this, but mine do not. And we're not hearing that clear enough. We're made to feel bad because you make it sound like we're trying to kill people or it's for some other reason. No, it's not. It's for the mental health of my folks. The mental health of my folks. Because I'm tired of hearing children that are struggling and even looking at suicide. I talked to a young person who said that at the high school where he had graduated from, moms were crying because they were so afraid of what their football playing sons were going to do, because they were so upset about not being able to play football, of not being in school. Guys, this isn't just about we're trying to kill anybody and we're not doing our due diligence. No, but is this staying so separate really going to be worth it in the end? When we try to spend money, we talk about bringing the bonding bill up. How do we pay for that? We don't have much coming in. Why? Because everything's closed. If we want to start jobs, the bonding bill is a great way to do it. But guess what? Opening up Minnesota is a great thing to do. And you're going to hear that more and more from greater Minnesota, that they are more interested in opening up and paying the taxes and paying people to come and work for them. They'd rather do that than worry about whether or not they're wearing the right mask. People we aren't dumb. We social distance. It's different than what you do, maybe, in the metro area. But we're also really confident in ourselves. We aren't scared. When I don't even know what the percentages are now, but when 99% make it just fine through COVID, just like they would through the flu or anything else, what are we doing to our folks in Minnesota? They're leaving. They're leaving. That's what they're doing. They're leaving. And how do we spend money when folks are leaving? I really struggle with that one. Early this morning, I had a procedure, and I had to go by myself. My husband could just drop me off, and then we had to wait for him to show up so I could leave. And mine was just a precautionary measure, something you do every so often. But it was still really hard to walk in that clinic alone and not have my husband there. I can't imagine what other folks are doing. Well, I do know. I think we've seen stories on the news about folks who have had to drop their loved ones at the door. And here we are again. It's not good for people. It's not good for people to be shut off like that. COVID is serious. Yes, it is. So is the flu and so many other things. We all know that. And we don't act, I hope, irresponsibly when we have the flu. But let's put COVID in perspective. Let's look at the data. Let's look at the numbers. That's what we're asking you to do. But then let's also look at what our constituents say. My constituents are very different than what I'm hearing from folks in the metro area. They want to know why we haven't taken the powers away. Why are we doing this? They're disgusted, they're angry, and they're scared because they're losing their businesses, their livelihoods. No, we were elected to be there, to be the voice of these people, and they are not being heard. And they don't feel like they're being heard. They want to know why this keeps continuing on and on and on. They don't think that favorably of the governor. And I'm not sure if you've driven around rural Minnesota, but I think you'd see a few signs that say they don't think that favorably of the governor. People are hurting. So is what we're doing going to be better than what would happen if they had COVID? I don't know. I think we're going to have a large group of them that are just not going to be here anymore because they are going to find someplace else to go. And we're not going to have businesses to pay the taxes so that we can spend money. The reason we keep coming back all the time, the reason it's Groundhog's Day all over again, is because our constituents are telling us over and over and over and over again, we are not being heard. Why do we even go through election to get reelected if we can't do anything? It's time, guys. It's time. People are not doing well. Suicides are up. Drug addiction and drug issues are up. Mental health issues are escalating. We need to start looking at this, and we need to look at the whole state, the entire state, all the voices, and we need to go forward. Right now, we're just stagnant. We need to go forward. Thank you.
The member from Candy Ojai, Representative Baker.
I'm sorry, I thought I was unmuted. Thank you, Speaker and members. I wanted to share with you my experience as a small business owner this summer with what we're all dealing with here, and sort of my work earlier in the year with another member of the House that I thought made sense and made a difference back then. I run a small cruise line business, Green Lake Cruises. I also have a hotel in Wilmer, and our cruise line business had a tough year, of course, because we had to lower the occupancy pretty dramatically. We got through it, made it happen. I think I was like a lot of other hospitality folks that we were hoping by the end of the summer, we had a better understanding and a better awareness of where this was going. I was hoping by the end of the summer, most of our restaurants would be at full capacity. I was hoping that other things had been tweaked up, but what we have seen is certainly not that. And it's disappointing. And I'm not suggesting that we should go 100% everywhere, like there's no rules. That's not what I'm suggesting. But what I learned at the end of the summer was we should be doing something to make these adjustments in our economy, make sure we don't leave money on the table, if I could use that kind of a business model that we talk about, or leave opportunity there when we are not making the adjustments in the right amount of tweaks at the right time. So back in May, I called my friend and colleague, Representative Heather Edelson out of Edina, and we had been talking about some small business things. And we together worked really hard to work with the salons, the gyms, the restaurants, to get them to be open. And prior to me reaching out to Representative Edelson, I was having a really hard time getting into the governor's office, getting any attention. The minute I called up my friend, it seemed like the doors opened much better. We worked hard together to try to talk to a lot of groups, and we actually felt like part of the solution was we got restaurants open. We got the gyms and salons open to 25%, and I was really proud of what happened. So at the end of the summer, fast forward, end of the summer, I was hoping we were going to be open some more. We had the mask mandates come along, and we still had gyms at 25%. Our salons are still at 25%. I'm a person who goes to the YMCA 3 times a week in Wilmer. At 5:30 in the morning, we take our temperature every single day. I have to sign up online before I go because they only have so many slots available in the boot camp class that I attend. And so when you do those things, you get into a routine, but it's the same size that has been there for some time because of the 25% limits. So what I did was I actually recently reached out to my friend again, Representative Edelson, and I said, hey, how's it going with you? I'm having some issues. I'd like to be able to talk to the governor about what's next. What can we do to help businesses? Because again, I think that at the end of the summer, we know a lot more. Again, as the summer winds down, people start moving indoors. We need to make sure that We are ready for this switch in our seasons here in Minnesota. And again, as she always is, she's very accommodating. She agreed that we should talk about this. So Representative Edelson and I wrote a very nice, respectful letter to the governor about a week ago. And actually the next day, we actually had received notice from somebody in the agency that, hey, by the way, we're moving our tables on the restaurants up to 10 from that. And we thought, whoa, that was really cool. We thought we were actually making a difference. Likely they had been talking about that anyway, so I don't think I can honestly think that that letter had a lot to do with it, but it certainly made us feel like that's a good move. Now, since then, nothing has been said back to us about the other sectors in that letter that we wanted to address. And what we were looking for was simply time with the governor and his staff. 30 minutes would have been great because under the current situation, that one person has unbelievable power. And we can talk till we're blue in the face at all the agencies, but Governor Tim Walz right now has that ability to say, you know what, that's right. I think that makes sense, or it doesn't make sense. But because he is the one, I felt it was important for Representative Edelson and I to hear that from him directly. We wrote a letter to him, signed it jointly, very respectful. We wanted to address salons, gymnasiums and gyms, our membership clubs, the YMCAs, the Lifetimes, the Anytime Fitness, and so on, because at 25%, as people are moving indoors, they're going to lose a lot of memberships if we don't do something now. Restaurants, again, I know that's a tricky one. Representative Liebling said a lot of things that, you know, I certainly know, being in the restaurant industry myself. It's hard to get a complete handle, and, you know, to raise it just to a flat 75% is going to be a little tricky. But I will tell you that there are a lot of places that could add 4 or 5 tables with some plexiglass on one side of the table. And if they were just a little closer than the 6-foot minimum, if you did it 4 feet, you could get another 2-3 tables sometimes in a restaurant operation with some plexiglass that isn't there now. That is the difference from making a profit or not in this industry. There's extra room on the flat top grill for those extra burgers, for those 3 extra tables. Their labor is no more. The light bill doesn't change one bit. The mortgage payment does not change. But if you can add a little bit more, that makes a huge difference to that little cafe, that little restaurant that wants to make it. And let's talk about these retail stores. They're still at 50%. And thinking about small retailers in rural Minnesota, they're just now getting geared up for the holiday season, which typically is their lifeline for their years. They are nervous as can be because right now they had a couple of bumps with summer traffic in rural Minnesota. They had a few times where they actually had to say people couldn't come in at 50%. Actually, excuse me, at 50%. They have some room to move up a bit. Now, we need to start giving them time to do this. And I think, you know, the reason we keep bringing this up is because we're running out of time. And Representative Mason earlier said, hey, what are we doing this for? We should be talking about bonding. We should be talking about all the other important things. When we have time for these extra things, is what she said, we can do this. Well, with all due respect, we need this now. These extra things are their livelihoods. These extra things are something that we don't need to wait for. And these will create jobs quickly. They are ready to go. But we don't have time to wait, because if tomorrow the governor said, yeah, we could go to 50% for gymnasiums and 50% for salons, you know, they're still doing all the mask up. And I think everybody is doing a terrific job with keeping people safe. But at 25%, there is no way they can sustain that level. So my plea to the members in the House is just understand, Representative Edelson and I are still waiting for this meeting with the governor. We have not heard anything since the day we sent in that letter. We're waiting. And I'm glad, again, some members have said today, we get all kinds of access to the agencies. We get reports right away. Well, good for you. But the 40,000 people in Candiota County don't maybe get that. I don't know why that is. I don't want to guess and surmise what that might be. But my folks are not getting the same attention I think that you are now. If I send an email for questions, I do get information back. It's not that I'm not getting a response, but what I need to do is talk to the decision maker, the one that will actually make a change, because hopefully this person has heard from people representing 40,000 people in an area in the state of Minnesota, like all of us do. So all I'm asking is understand behind the scenes, leadership is going on. We're trying to open the doors. A couple of us members here in a bipartisan manner are really working hard to protect our small businesses. So Governor Walz, we're still waiting. We want that call to happen, and we are desperately waiting for that 30 minutes with you and your staff to help us share some thoughts that we're hearing from our business people so that you can hear directly from them through our channels. So we have work to do. Holidays are coming. The retail stores need some wiggle room. Gymnasiums and salons, 25%. We opened to 25%, folks, because they were closed down. We needed to give them a little bit of walking room. This is almost a crawl at 25%. They had to get the masks up. They had to get the signs in the windows. Please do not come in. No walk-ins allowed. All those things. The gymnasiums had the website set up. I have to sign up online ahead of time. They had to do this. Well, now if you allow them to go to 50%, it will make their life much better than it is today. And so we just need to make sure that the governor hears us, and a lot of us don't feel that way. And I wanted to share that with my colleagues because this is important. It's important right now in October that we get this right. Christmas and the holidays will be on top of us before we know it, and you only get one shot at Christmas 2020. And so please, Governor and members, don't think that we aren't working behind the scenes. Don't think we're asking for some movement on this. I just think it's important that you do know we are working in a bipartisan manner in a lot of ways. I'm sure we're not the only example here, but that's my example I wanted to share because I'm proud to work with Representative Edelson on this issue for small businesses, and I hope the governor hears us, and I hope that he reaches out to us so we can try to make a difference. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
The member from Sibley, Representative Gruenhagen.
Yeah, this is Representative Glenn Gruenhagen. Can you hear me? Hello?
Representative Gruenhagen, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Yeah, I just wanted to share from an educational standpoint why we should lift these emergency powers and what some of the consequences are to our children. Now, this would affect all of us in our different districts we represent across the state of Minnesota. I had a rural school district out here in my district. It's a smaller school district. They voted 4-2 as a school board to reopen their school for in-class education for the children, okay? Then they had to have a special meeting, and I attended that second special meeting, and there wasn't a representative from Minnesota Department of Education there, but they did have an attorney there who had referenced Knutson and Flynn, which is an educational attorney firm in the metro area. In fact, when I was on the school board, I actually worked with them on some negotiations. So I'm familiar with them. But the attorney that was there read the three options or the three consequences if the school board insisted upon going against the Minnesota Department of Education's mandate not to have children in the classroom. And again, I think it was 3 days off, distance learning, and 2 days on, where they could come into the classroom or rotate. And basically, here's the three consequences that Knutson and Flynn said the Minnesota Department of Education could do to the local public school. Number one, the school board members who voted to reopen the school could be charged criminally with 90 days in jail and a $1,000 fine. Members, think about that. Secondly, the school board members that voted to reopen against the will of the Minnesota Department of Education could be charged with civil penalties. And they weren't specified what they'd be, just that they would be charged, could be charged criminal or civilly. The third consequence was the Minnesota Department of Education could arbitrarily reduce per pupil funding to their district without any legislation, just arbitrarily do it. Now, those were the three. Now, by the way, that attorney spoke right at the end. Before that, we had numerous parents and representatives speak in favor of opening the school, including myself. But members, think about it, that an attorney firm would say, here's what the Minnesota Department of Education could do to you if you as a duly elected school board decide to go against their mandate. Now, I think that's tyrannical, to tell you the truth. And I don't know why we would even put up with that when we have a local elected school board who wants to live within or protect anybody vulnerable. And if we look at the medical science and facts, we see that children and people are not, are over 99% curable from this without deaths. Now, again, there's the exception, but we can protect that person. The other thing that's really disconcerting out of this, according to the board members, the Minnesota Department of Education has now sent out guidance to public schools to reduce the passing grade from 70% on academics down to 50%, members. You know what you're doing to these children academically and ultimately to their futures with this type of a mandate and tyrannical requirement on these children? Please think about it. Also, the emails you get from parents who their children are struggling at home, probably because the parents have to work or not be there all the time, and they don't have the technology to participate in the class, and especially out here in the rural district. So again, members, we have to balance the risk of the infection with the consequences of what we're doing. And I just remind you, members, as you vote on this, that life has risk, especially a civilization like ours. You get in the car, you drive to work, or you drive to see some friends. There's a chance you can have a car accident and get maimed and killed, but you do it anyway. If you don't agree with that, then I expect to see you driving home or driving on the road 10 to 20 miles an hour or bicycling all year round in 20 below zero, okay? I mean, even when you bicycle, there's a chance somebody could hit you. If you fly on an airplane, there's a chance that airplane can crash. So maybe we should get rid of airplanes. By the time you're done talking about this, you could pretty much dig a hole and crawl in it, okay? Is what we seem to be doing. And life has risk. If you want to enjoy and participate in it, you go swimming, you could drown. I mean, it can go on and on. I mean, members, we have to balance the risk with the infection rate. And we're doing a really poor job when we allow one person in this state, and I'm not going to say he isn't trying, okay? But when we allow one person to basically dictate all of these rules through the agencies. I mean, we are living in an agency and governor dictate situation regardless of the data. And the data is in and it doesn't justify it. And if you care about the children, you're going to allow duly elected people, which we all are, to participate in the process rather than sit on the sidelines. Please, members, forget about the Democrat and Republican. Vote to lift this emergency powers for what's best for our state and especially our children. You can't make these years back up again very easily. And the majority of children are hurting, especially those with special needs or lower achievers. They're the ones who don't have access to the best technology. They're the ones that are being hurt, and their future is being permanently hurt. Please, members, think this through when you vote. And I know you all care and want to do what's right, but we can't just allow one person and some unelected agency heads to run this whole situation when we have these types of consequences. Hey, God bless, and I'll keep praying for all of you. Thank you.
The member from Clearwater, Representative Grossell.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. You know, I want you to, listening to everybody, I want you to do just exactly what Representative Liebling said. Take what I have to say very seriously. I want to share a story from our frontline personnel, a couple nurses. And their story, they shared with me their experiences. It goes like this. Hi, Matt. I'm following up on our conversation earlier. I'll try to articulate the results of this never-ending lockdown as clearly as I can. I've been doing a lot of heart-wrenching reflection, and I'll try to limit the results of the lockdown, not what I think, as it's hard not to inject my opinion. For anonymity, I refer to the residents as they. When we were about one month into this, a friend, another nurse, and I were discussing the decline we were already starting to see in our residents. At that time, we predicted at least 8 deaths related to loneliness, isolation, and depression. And these are people in a long-term care facility, folks, if you haven't already gathered that. And this was as a result of missing their families. Unfortunately, we have been correct. We have lost at least 7, which we feel were directly related to broken hearts. Most had severe dementia, but not all. The one thing they all had in common was that they had very involved families, very involved families. Some were in their 90s. All, and a few were, not all, and a few were severely ill at the start. Once they were isolated, they simply could not understand what happened to their families. They would say, quote, "They just dumped me here and abandoned me." One used to play cards with their family 2 to 4 times a week for 2 or 3 hours. Not Old Maid or Go Fish, but rummy, whist, etc. Games that took significant cognitive ability. They went from that to laying in bed all day in the dark. We would get them up for the meal, and they would go back to bed without eating. As depression deepens, appetites decrease, weight loss follows. They became weak, began to fall, health starts to fail, and eventually death follows. Another spouse visited every day just to sit and hold hands. The, quote, abandoned spouse lost their will to live and simply decided to die. It doesn't matter how much we try to explain it. They simply do not have the ability to understand. Many have milder symptoms of depression, i.e. refusing to shower, refuse to put on clean clothes, get their hair done. This also is a problem since they closed our salon. Some have declined to the point they were hospitalized, which ironically helped because they got to have one visitor. One visitor in person. The difficulty that once they came back to us, they were isolated again because they potentially had been exposed. Many are choosing to delay appointments because they end up back in isolation if they enter the clinic or hospital complex. Of course, we do telehealth visits, but those are not always adequate. We also do video visits with families. But if it was your spouse, would it really be adequate to see their face on a screen? Especially if you have difficulty hearing, seeing, processing. Human beings are social creatures. Human beings are made to touch and be touched, hugged, see a smiling face. We are made for community. We're made for those personal relationships. There is a reason that solitary confinement is used against the worst of the worst criminals. And these are our folks in the nursing home, people. These are our folks in the nursing home that this type of isolation has been subjected on them by the shutdown and the lockdown. Of course, this is just a short summary of the problem. But I hope it helps you to understand and communicate to the governor that he is killing people with this lockdown, just as if they all contracted COVID. It's death by 1,000 cuts, slow and excruciating. Families and those of us who work in long-term care have to watch while feeling completely helpless. Thank you again for your concern for those without a voice. Sincerely, frontline nurses. Madam Speaker and members, that is a letter from the very people that we call these frontline heroes, these frontline warriors, the very people we all support. They are horrified at what they're seeing and feel helpless. They feel completely helpless. Like many, I also have family members in many of the frontline positions, law enforcement, teachers, and nursing. But their faith in Jesus Christ keeps them in the fight every day to serve their neighbors and those most in need. Just like these nurses that sent me this letter. These are not COVID deaths. These are deaths from being locked down and isolated. So I'll leave you with this little simple quote. Well, I'll save that quote for just a second. These are deaths, according to these nurses, and from what I can see, are due to Governor Walz's lockdown. And the House majority is standing silent in the face of this evil. You don't have to stand silent. All you got to do is say enough of this. Let's fall back, regroup, and get on the right sheet of music. But I will leave you with this simple quote. Silence in the face of evil is itself evil. God will not hold us guiltless. Not to speak is to speak. Not to act is to act. It is time for everyone to step up and act and stop remaining silent. That was a quote from Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Thank you, Madam Speaker and members.
The member from Ramsey, Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I will admit to feeling pretty appalled right at the moment. The idea that those elderly members of our community who are in isolation right now are there because Governor Walz is I think the phrase that was used was is killing them. I find just deeply, deeply offensive and incredible. And I'll note that this is from not necessarily Representative Grassel in particular, but I feel like all the way along we've heard a lot of comments about how, well, this is really not that bad, and really it only affects the elderly. It only affects people who have got, certain underlying health conditions. And, this is part of the cost. I think there was a comment that was made earlier that, life is full of risks. And so really the way that we should deal with this, I feel like I've heard anyway, is we should be going about our business, doing our things. And so what we need to do is simply basically lock up those people who may be at great risk of this. So I will say that what Representative Grassel's constituents are expressing concern about is in fact a strategy, an approach that I feel like I've heard all the way along as being one that we should take. We should once again divide ourselves. We should put ourselves in different places and not have those connections and not be thinking about one another. And so the thought that those constituents who are in that situation are in there somehow because of actions that have been taken to protect all of us is incredible. You want to protect those people in that room, wear a mask. Wear a mask. Limit your attendance at social gatherings and make sure to be careful, not only to protect those people who are there, but to protect all the people in our community, including those particular folks that Representative Grassel is referencing. We want to make sure that every person in our community is safe and is healthy. Look, living through a pandemic is lousy. Pandemics are horrible. And of course, there is a sense of loss and of anger that we're hearing all the way along. As Representative Franson, she said, a virus is going to virus, and it's true. It is going to virus. It is going to be coming after us. And the question is, how do we respond? And the fact is, people are going to respond to the reality of the situation. We are not going to be having things go to normal in terms of restaurants and stores and other things, not because of anything the government does, but because people will not put themselves in that situation as long as there is a dangerous virus outstanding. And yes, it is in fact dangerous. And for folks who are saying that, we should be making these particular decisions when we are at war with this virus, which is in fact what is going on, when those same people are downplaying and saying, well, it's really not that big of a deal. It's just like the flu, and it really only affects some people and only those people with those conditions. I want to point out that the school board chair in my district, a woman in her 30s, died of the virus. She is one of thousands of Minnesotans, more than 200, and I believe 10,000 folks all across the U.S., many 9/11s, has been said before. Members, we've heard all the way along that we should be opening up. We should be taking these steps and opening up like North Dakota and South Dakota. North Dakota with the biggest outbreak right now of the pandemic anywhere in the country. South Dakota close behind. Yes, a death rate considerably higher than other places around the country. If you want things to open up again, please, please wear a mask. Please act like you want to be a responsible member of our community and protect people. And as we do that, then of course people are going to feel more comfortable to be able to go places. But the thing that's preventing that right now is that we are not feeling safe. Members of our community are not, and that's because of the actual reality. And I want to close with a message from actually my own constituents, so to respond to those heroic nurses in Representative Grossel's district protecting their patients. And please, let's all protect people as well. And my own constituent is a hospitalist. The doctor works in a hospital. He posted this some time back just on a neighborhood a listserv. And he says to remind people, we are still in a pandemic. He said, I normally don't post on here, but I've taken care of countless cases of COVID-19, including multiple deaths in the ICU as people are gasping for their last breaths. We're still in a pandemic with cases rising every day, and Minnesota is losing ground. And he points out that a member of the Trump administration specifically flew to Minnesota to implore us to avoid even small gatherings, as those have been discovered to be the source of multiple positive cases. My constituent says, I can confirm this. And he says this is a slap in the face to the frontline workers trying to keep people safe and frequently save their lives. And in fact, people attending those gatherings and being out the way that they are demonstrate blatant disrespect to, at that point, it was almost 190,000 people who've died. We're now up to more than 210,000. My constituent says, this is not politicization. I'm a staunch independent. This is medical fact. Members, we need to respond to the medical fact that we see in front of us, as in fact our constituents are doing so. We need to recognize that we continue to be in a dangerous emergency situation, and we're taking the steps that we need to, and that our governor is taking the steps that he needs to as well. And as long as we are ignoring that fact and downplaying the seriousness of this, then in fact, to my mind, that undermines the seriousness of purported attempts to handle the situation in a different way. Show that you're serious about this. Let's all do that. And then let's get through this crisis together. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Robbins.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, members. I have spoken on this numerous times, but I have not for a few months. So I just wanted to revisit the point that I have sought to make so many times, that we are in a pandemic. This is serious. People are suffering, but it's not equally spread across the state. And what's most important, if we really want to follow the data, is to let local decisions be made based on local data. So I just did a quick update on the data and wanted to share a few things with you. As of this morning, 51 of our 87 counties have had less than 500 positive cases. 17 have had between 500 and 1,000 positive cases, and 19 have had over 1,000 cases. The virus is serious, but is not impacting the whole state in the same way. And we do not need to have statewide mandates on businesses and schools that apply equally around the state, because it's killing our small businesses, it's killing our communities, it's hurting our families, it's devastating people who have put their heart and their soul into their businesses and their life savings into their businesses when the data just doesn't support it. Let's look at the data for deaths. Right now, 69 of our 87 counties have had less than 10 deaths. 77 of our 87 counties have had less than 20 deaths. There is a very serious problem with people do die from COVID, and it's very tragic. 71% of those deaths are from long-term care facilities. We have to double down on testing and isolating people in long-term care facilities, making sure that they have every resource available, making sure that they are not sent back to their residences when they're discharged from the ICUs. We need to protect the vulnerable. But nevertheless, the virus is not widespread. And if we focus on isolating and helping those with long-term care facilities and those most vulnerable due to underlying health risks, we can make huge strides, but not completely keep the economy shut down, because the impacts of that, not only for our economic growth, but for families in poverty and for families who have disadvantaged already in the school system, and we already have the #1 achievement gap in the country. My greatest fear is the incredible exacerbation of the achievement gap by how this is affecting our students who are in the most poor socioeconomic statuses and communities. And so I really want to urge us to continue to find ways to use local data to be responsive. And I have tried to reach out to the governor. I know many of you on the other side of the aisle have great success with that. I have not. And so last week I had heard that the governor was coming to Maple Grove. And so I went where he was going to a small business and respectfully showed up with some of the small business owners I've been trying to help who have not had our voices heard. And the governor was gracious and did listen to us. And I appreciate that he took the time to hear from my constituents, because otherwise I don't have a voice. Unless we physically go to where the governor is, I feel like I'm not being able to represent my constituents. And that is not how this body is designed to function or how our government is designed to function. So members, I'll just close with, we have beat this horse to death, including me, and I'm sorry about that. But way back in July, our side of the aisle offered an alternative where I was just rereading it this morning. It was in the July special session where we brought forward a bill that would codify some of the governor's emergency powers, that would allow for him to continue to make decisions in between, but that would change how we voted to allow him to continue that rather than the way it's done now. And we've had that on the table since July. This is not saying the whole emergency is over. The things he's already put in place aren't going to continue for PPE and other things. So we put that proposal on the table, and it wasn't able to be voted on. So members, I just urge you, let's please try to work together, try to find a way to move forward with the legislature and the governor working together. I really believe the people in my district want the governor to work with us, and I hope that he wants to work with us as well. Thank you.
The member from Olmsted, Representative Quam.
Okay, there the mute worked. Madam Speaker and members, we've heard a lot of stories, a lot of accounts, and it's very evident that there are differences between our communities. There are, individuals within communities that have different effects and outcomes from this emergency. But one thing is pretty clear, that most of the year we've been under the emergency powers. And we're starting to, I think, understand what we need to do, how to do it, and the flexibilities required. As has been brought up, we've had bills before us that codified and put in statute the flexibilities and the actions that would be required to quickly address the issues in regards to the pandemic. I have confidence in the competency of our legislature to actually, after more than half a year, put into statute what's required to address the issues before the state, allowing purchase of PPE, allowing assistance, etc. And I think that is our duty, because as we heard these stories, we realize that we need to address the different areas with some flexibility and specific options. and having 201 legislators bring forth the voices of our constituents and the concerns, we can have a complete and effective approach to addressing with the options needed for the different communities. And this debate about ending the emergency powers isn't a debate about saying there will no longer need to be certain activities. It's a debate about allowing for the legislative process to have a more complete solution and addressing of those problems. And I'm not hearing anyone say that it's done, but I'm hearing a lot of people saying, we've learned this and this and this, and let us come together for a complete solution. No one is perfect. And, the governor, it's a great, burden upon his shoulders, being the one that makes those final decisions. I think it behooves us to step forward and help take some of that burden off his shoulders, take responsibility, show that we are representing the people of the state, and we are competent, and we've learned from all of these months what needs to be done, sitting down and doing it and moving forward. So I would ask that we consider stepping up and doing our job in addressing the needs of our constituents across the state. Thank you.
The member from Washington, Representative Jurgens.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's been a while now, but I listened to the comments of Representative Liebling, and honestly, I was a little bit offended by the implication of some of the things that she said, but I don't want to go there. I do want to clarify something. Representative Liebling said that she's talked to restaurant owners who've had a great experience with the Department of Health coming into their restaurants. And that's the problem. In the case that I was talking about, the restaurant in my district, it wasn't the Department of Health. Bars and restaurants are accustomed to the Department of Health coming in. They do it annually at least. And if they find an infraction, they generally are going to work with the business owner to fix that. And they only fine typically if those get ignored and they don't get rectified. That's not what happened here. This was a policy set forth by the governor for increased compliance. A partnership, I guess you could call it, between the Department of Public Safety, Department of Health, and a division of Department of Labor and Industry, Minnesota OSHA. Now, when OSHA goes into a business, it's way different than if it's a Department of Health. They have their own rules, their own processes, their own procedures. The name of their department is OSHA Compliance. They come in to lay the hammer down, and that's what they did, not work with the business. Department of Health, from what I've heard from other businesses, that's what they're doing. They're helping, but that didn't happen in this case. Now, in our case, the case that I was talking about, the business is contesting the fine, and as a result, they're spending time in that process instead of on their business. And they're spending money on an attorney instead of investing it in their business. But this is the point. This is I think, a well-intended but errant policy that falls directly on the shoulders of the governor. And I've requested several times to get 5 minutes with him. I talked to 3 members of his staff that all said they'd get back to me. I'm still waiting. I left a voicemail for another member of his staff, no response. I sent the governor a text and I left him a voicemail. And I'm still waiting. Now, we've had meetings with Department of Labor, and it could very well be that it was the governor's staff that reached out to them and asked them to meet with me. And they've been somewhat productive. Department of Labor has agreed on one of their policies having to do with discounts or credits on their fines. So that's a good thing. It's a step in the right direction. But I heard Representative Baker earlier say that he's had trouble getting time or a conversation with the governor, and that's my experience too. Now, early on during this, and I've said this on the House floor before, when I sent emails or contacted the governor's office early on in COVID, I was very happy with the response I got. We got clarifications on our questions. I thought that they were doing a great job. But this is a policy set forth from the executive branch, because the legislative branch isn't involved with it. That's why I think we need to end the emergency powers so that we can work with the branches of government. If a sitting representative can't get 5 minutes with the governor, what does that say to the 5.6 million Minnesotans? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Winkler.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I just want to bring us back to what this motion is and what the result of a successful motion would do. The motion is to suspend the rules and immediately take up a resolution which would terminate the governor's peacetime emergency authority. The Senate has already passed such a resolution. So if the motion were to be successful, we would then move on to the debate on the main resolution itself. And presuming that the same outcome would happen with that resolution, the governor's peacetime emergency authority would be terminated immediately. That means that every single executive order related to COVID-19 would cease and have no legal effect whatsoever. What you are asking us to do today is to immediately end all of Minnesota's response to COVID-19 and to begin a process by which the governor, the House majority, and the Senate Republican majority would have to start negotiating how Minnesota would respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. That is the choice that is before us. And I think it would be a big mistake to hand over the Minnesota response to COVID-19 to Republican legislators in the Senate who have consistently minimized the seriousness of COVID-19, who have continued to throw up false and bogus arguments about its dangerous level of danger that it poses, who continually say that only 500 cases isn't so bad, only a few thousand deaths isn't so bad, and who, in fact, continue to show that the seriousness of the disease is not matched with the seriousness of your career as policymakers. If you are genuinely concerned about small businesses in your district, and I'm sure you are, if you are genuinely concerned about the mental health of seniors, if you're genuinely concerned about the success of students, if you are genuinely concerned about the dangers posed to people who are not able to pursue their normal daily activities today, then blaming Governor Walz for it is not a genuine or serious response. This is a pandemic. This is a disease that hurts and kills and hospitalizes people, and it is the disease that is causing these harms. And people's natural and rational response to a dangerous disease is to protect themselves and their family. That is why this is happening. What's happening in the economy is happening because of a disease, not because of a governor. So if your concerns are as genuine and as I'm sure that you believe that they are, then it's time to start leveling with the people in your district about the source of the problem. It is not the governor's emergency powers or his use of them that has caused this problem. It is an act of nature. We are doing the best that we can. And I think as we consider this vote on suspension of the rules, it may be worthwhile to remember that the two Republican leaders in the House and Senate are not at the Capitol today because they were exposed to COVID-19 by the President of the United States. This is not a serious position to take today. Please vote no.
The member from, let's see, sorry. Right, Representative Lucero.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. As I've been listening to the debate today, something that Representative Grossell and Representative Franzen brought up earlier reminded me of something I learned when I was going to school for psychology. And so I pulled it up on the internet here just to get a brief summary of the study that was performed. And specifically, it was in reference to Representative Grossell's comments pertaining to relationships and loneliness and human touch. So in the early 1950s, American psychologist Harry Harlow provided a dramatic demonstration of the importance of touch in coping. Harlow set out to study the effect that separation from their mothers has on children by conducting a range of experiments with baby monkeys. Harlow raised the baby monkeys in isolation in a cage that contained two surrogate mothers. One of the mothers was made of metal wire, and the other was wrapped in terry cloth. Along with the wire mother contained a bottle from which the monkeys could nurse. So the wired monkey had the nutrients in order to survive. But the monkeys would cling to the terry cloth mother when they were frightened, even when this led them to dehydrate and starve. Harlow's monkeys were apparently hungry for something other than food. They were literally starving for warm, comforting touch. With these studies, Harlow was the first to show that intimate body contact, not feeding, was the most important factor when it comes to human interaction. And then I was also reminded of a news article from earlier this year. Pioneer Press, a couple months ago, quote, "Families are literally watching as their loved ones die of loneliness," unquote, said Christine Sundberg, Executive Director of Elder Voice Family Advocates. Quote, "We know full well isolation has a significant impact on both physical and mental well-being," unquote. The article goes on. Sundberg and other advocates for seniors and vulnerable adults say the recent guidance the State Department of Health issued for window and outdoor visits doesn't go far enough. After more than 3 months in isolation, long-term care residents desperately need contact with their loved ones, they said. Quote, "So many of our families are just desperate to see their people, especially those with memory issues," unquote, Sundberg said. Quote, "We are seeing serious impacts. We need to figure this out. We need to help families get together," unquote. 3 Minnesotans, all of their 90s, who died in early June had social isolation listed as the cause of death or a contributing factor on their death certificates. Only one of them had tested positive for COVID-19, but all 3 lived in long-term care facilities that have been ordered to restrict outside visitors to protect residents from the virus. Members, human interaction, human touch, interpersonal communication, relationships is incredibly important. And it is a direct result of a single man making unilateral decisions that has caused this unfortunate outcome. Governor Walz is responsible for the choices in the unilateral mandates that he's made. and the Democrat House majority who chooses to undermine the legislative branch and continue to allow one man unilateral control is a contributor in the results that have happened to Minnesotans. I am reminded of what Christ said in the New Testament. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. So I examine the actions. Well, where is the treasure of Governor Walz and the Democrat majority? And you can see where their treasure and hence their heart is. It's with Planned Parenthood, not with churches. We saw the initial unilateral mandates come down. Planned Parenthood was the priority. Churches were deemed non-essential. As the summer continued, we see the priority of Democrats is to protect big businesses versus the small businesses across our great state. We've seen this incredible wealth transfer as our small businesses, the economic engines of our economy, have been forced closed, forced to operate at 25 or 50%, or forced out of business permanently, while the big businesses have prospered. And we've seen the results come out in the recent filings of record profits. They have record profits because the Democrats are protecting big businesses and shutting the doors of our small businesses. There is no data, there is no science that says that the doors of these big businesses should be open while the doors of our small businesses should be closed. There is no data, there's no science that says that the indoor football field size candy store can be open, but an actual football field outside had to have been closed back when there was graduation ceremonies taking place earlier in the summer. The priorities of the hearts and the treasures of the Democrat majority is government control.
Madam Speaker. Representative Becker-Finn, for what purpose do you rise?
Point of order.
State your point of order.
Point of order under section, well, there are many sections I could cite for this one, but section 121.2, no person may indulge in personalities or impugn motives of members.
Representative Becker-Finn raises a point of order. I will defer ruling, but I will remind members to refer to custom and usage, Masons, and our House rules, and not to bring personalities into debate. Representative Lucero.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I will, for the duration of my comments here, I will not cite or reference Matthew 6:21 after this. So I'm done with that. The outcomes of the Democrat policies have been government control versus individual choice. The results of Democrat choices have been dependence on government versus empowering people. The results of Democrat policies have subverted our constitutional republic while lifting up authoritarian control and rule. Members, most of us know what April 15th is known for. It's tax day. Most of us know May 15th, it's property tax day. And in just a few days from now, it'll be October 15th. And most of us know what happens on October 15th. It's the deadline of the second half of property taxes. And while the temperatures continue to cool here, and businesses that have at least been able to make a little bit of money operating on sidewalks and outdoor patios are going to have a more difficult time, they still have to pay their property taxes. And this is homeowners and commercial properties alike. And as a real estate agent, one of the things that is going to be a delayed impact as a direct result of the Democrat control is going to be home foreclosures. The process generally is about 12 to 18 months in the future, because as people fall behind, I know that there are programs out there, I know that there are deferments, but deferments don't erase what's due. These mortgages, and if they're renters, there's going to be a reckoning. And I have a great concern, and many of us in the real estate industry are watching very closely at what's going to happen 12 to 18 months from now with the negative impacts of Governor Walz and the Democrat majority's decisions. Next year, when it comes to commercial properties, generally speaking, are valued based on the amount of revenue they can generate. So if a commercial property is being rented out and there's a softening in the commercial market, the amount that can be collected in rent decreases, and hence the value decreases. And there's going to be a delayed impact when it comes to property tax valuations, not in 2021, because the taxable value for taxes paid in 2021 was established in 2020. But when it comes to January of 2021, when the property tax, when the taxable value of properties is established for taxes paid 2022, it's going to be significantly reduced. So the delayed ramifications of the continued unilateral control and ill-advised decision-making that continues to take place is going to be felt for another several years to come, at a minimum several years. And I know a number of commercial property owners that are going to have their properties reevaluated, and that's going to have a detrimental impact on our counties. It's going to have a detrimental impact on our schools, because many of our schools rely heavily on the commercial industrial property tax base within their district. And with that significantly diminished, where are these schools going to go? Governor Walz is going to be directly responsible for harming school districts and education of thousands, tens of thousands of students. Members, Black Friday is coming up here in a little over a month and a half, in November. So 30 days from now, right, this peacetime emergency is going to be extended. We're only going to be approximately 2 weeks out from Black Friday. What's Black Friday? It's called Black Friday because that is the day that businesses, generally speaking, move into the black from the red. Because up until that point in the calendar year, there are so many expenses that they don't begin to make a profit on an annual basis until Black Friday. And I have serious concerns with Governor Walz. I believe that he's going to, in a month from now, he's going to extend it again, which will bring us right through Black Friday. But regardless, businesses have to make decisions now in anticipation of what is likely going to happen. And I fully expect Governor Walz to extend, but even if he doesn't, small businesses are not going to be able to react as quickly as the big businesses are. And it'll be yet another example of Democrats in the pockets of big business, protecting big business, making sure the profits of big business are exaggerated while crushing our small businesses. In regards to education, I'm sure most of us over the past years have heard about screen time, the amount of time that our young people are spending in front of screens, computer screens, versus the interpersonal communication, versus the relationships that are needed to develop well-rounded individuals. I have very serious concerns about the screen time that our young people are being forced into. I used to be a member in my first term of the Education Policy Committee, and I remember then the conversations of many who were very concerned about the physical fitness and how that continued to be sacrificed for other classes. And there was a movement to get people outside, to get our young people back into the physical fitness, to get them active, to get them to operate in teams, to get them to learn camaraderie. And the policies of Governor Walz and Democrats are detrimental to that objective. Just like the property value of commercial properties, just like foreclosures of single-family residences, there will be a delayed effect for years. The scars that are going to happen to our young people. And finally, members, numerous people, there is a bubble. There clearly is a bubble of the metrocentric Democrat mindset versus the rest of Minnesota. If you get outside the 7-county metro area, it is a vastly different mindset. And that's what the extremist Democrat majority doesn't understand. The people in the rest of Minnesota don't want the one-size-fits-all policies, the one-size-fits-all mandates. They want to live life and make choices for themselves, not live in continuous anxiety and fear. And that is all that the Democrat majority is selling: anxiety and fear. Fear, fear, fear. We are the government and we're here to help you. What a dangerous principle and concept. Members, please vote green to suspend the rules so we can restore Minnesota to what it should be. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, Representative New.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. First, I'd like to request a roll call on this vote.
Representative New requests a roll call. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. Representative New.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to go over a couple of things that we have heard during this debate. Number one, we were told that there's no definition of emergency in Chapter 12. And I just want to be very clear and tell you exactly what that definition is in Chapter 12. It is absolutely defined, and this is how it is defined. Emergency means an unforeseen combination of circumstances that calls for immediate action to prevent a disaster from developing or occurring. Immediate action. When the peacetime emergency was first implemented by Governor Walz, there was absolutely immediate action taken, and probably appropriately immediate action was taken. Again, this was an unknown virus. We didn't know what was happening. We didn't know how many people would become infected. We didn't know what the death rates would be. We didn't know what it would do to our hospital systems. There was really important immediate action taken at that time. And we all agreed. And again, I've said it before, but we did some of our best bipartisan work during that time as well to support those efforts. However, the last executive order that was given on August 26th. Prior to that, the last executive order that was given was July 30th. This is not immediate action. And frankly, those executive orders that were given, one of them allows co-ops and associations to hold remote elections. I suspect we could have figured that out legislatively. One of them was to direct schools to follow guidance from the Office of Higher Ed and MDH to clarify guidance on classroom occupancy in higher education. I suspect that we could have figured that out legislatively. Going back to July 30th, this one I love. This was the executive order regarding K-12 education. Now, interestingly, the direction given on K-12 was actually, in some ways, quite similar to what Republicans were proposing at the time, and that was a local control approach with some guidelines. I suspect we could have figured that out legislatively. There is no immediate action necessary. This isn't an emergency. By the definition in Chapter 12, this is not an emergency. Again, very early on in the COVID crisis, we actually did some of the best bipartisan work this legislature has seen. We got funding to our hospitals to ensure that they could be prepared for what was coming. And we got hospitals to MDH to make sure that MDH could be prepared for what was coming. Do you know what has been the only bipartisan issue since those early days? Ending the emergency powers. There is bipartisan support to end the emergency powers. This is not rocket science. I'm literally using the definition in Chapter 12 that is indeed there, that very specifically says that circumstances call for immediate action. When we haven't had an executive order for over a month, clearly this does not fit the definition of emergency in the Chapter 12 emergency powers. Members, please, let us have the vote. Vote to suspend the rules. Let's be honest about what's happening. Let's stop with the politics, and let's come together and do what we do best and work in a bipartisan way to solve these problems. Members, please vote green.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the motion to suspend the rules.
Acom.
Acom, no.
Acom, no. Albright. Albright, aye. Anderson.
Anderson, aye.
Anderson, aye. Backer.
Backer, aye.
Backer, aye. Bonner.
Bonner, no.
Bonner, no. Barr.
Barr, aye.
Barr, aye. Baker. Baker.
Baker, aye.
Baker, aye. Becker, Finn. Becker, Finn, no. Bennett.
Bennett, aye.
Bennett, aye. Bernardi. Bernardi, no. Bierman.
Bierman, no.
Bierman, no. Bow.
Bow, aye.
Bow, aye. Brand.
Brand, no.
Brand, no. Cantrell. Cantrell, no. Carlson, A.
Carlson, A, no.
Carlson, A, no. Carlson, L.
Carlson L, no.
Carlson, L, no. Christensen.
Christensen, no.
Christensen, no. Claflin.
Claflin, no.
Claflin, no. Considine.
Considine, no.
Considine, no. Daniels.
Daniels, aye.
Daniels, aye. Daudt.
Doubt, aye.
Daudt, aye. Davids. Davids, aye. Davney.
Davney, no.
Davney, no. Dean.
Dean, no.
Dean, no. Damath. Damath, aye. Detmer. Detmer, aye. Drazkowski.
Truskowski, aye.
Drazkowski, aye. Eklund.
Eklund, no.
Eklund, no. Edelson.
Edelson, no.
Edelson, no. Elkins.
Elkins, no.
Elkins, no. Erickson.
Erickson, aye.
Erickson, aye. Fabian.
Fabian, aye.
Fabian, aye. Fisher. Fisher.
Fisher, no.
Fisher, no. Franzen. Franzen, aye. Freiberg.
Freiberg, no.
Freiberg, no. Garofalo.
Garofalo, aye.
Garofalo, aye. Gomez.
Gomez, no.
Gomez, no. Green. Green. Grossel.
Grossel, aye.
Grossel, aye. Gruenhagen.
Gruenhagen, aye.
Gruenhagen, aye. Gunther.
Gunther, aye.
Gunther, aye. Haley.
Haley, aye.
Haley, aye. Halverson. Halverson, no. Hamilton.
Hamilton, aye.
Hamilton, aye. Hanson.
Hanson, no.
Hanson, no. Hassan.
Hassan, no.
Hassan, no. Hausman.
Hausman, no.
Hausman, no. Heinrich.
Heinrich, aye.
Heinrich, aye. Heinzman.
Heinzman, aye.
Heinzman, aye. Her.
Her, no.
Her, no. Hertos.
Hertos, aye.
Hertos, aye. Hornstein.
Hornstein, no.
Hornstein, no. Howard.
Howard, no.
Howard, no. Hewitt.
No.
Hewitt, no. Johnson.
Johnson, aye.
Johnson, aye. Jordan.
Jordan, no.
Jordan, no. Jurgens.
Jurgens, aye.
Jurgens, aye. Keel. Keel. Cleavorn.
Cleaborn, no.
Cleavorn, no. Cagle.
Cagle, no.
Cagle, no. Katiza Watun.
Katiza Watun, no.
Katiza Watun, no. Kosnick. Kosnick, aye. Kreshaw. Kreshaw. Kunish Podine. Kunish Podine, no. Lehman. Lehman, aye. Lee. Lee, no. Lesh.
Lesh, no.
Lesh, no. Liebling.
Liebling, no.
Liebling, no. Lean.
Lane, no.
Lean, no. Lilly.
Lily, no.
Lilly, no. Lippert.
Lippert, no.
Lippert, no. Lislegard.
Lislegard, yes.
Lislegard, aye. Long. Long, no. Lucero.
Lucero, yes.
Lucero, aye. Lewick.
Lewick, aye.
Lewick, aye. Mahoney.
Mahoney, no.
Mahoney, no. Mann.
Man, no.
Mann, no. Mariani.
No. Mariani, no.
Mariani, no. Marquardt.
Marquardt, aye.
Marquardt, aye. Mason.
Mason, no.
Mason, no. McDonald. McDonald. Mecklin.
Mecklin, aye.
Mecklin, aye. Miller.
Miller, aye.
Miller, aye. Moeller.
Moeller, no.
Moeller, no. Moran.
Morant, no.
Moran, no. Morrison.
Morrison, no.
Morrison, no. Munson.
Munson, aye.
Munson, aye. Murphy.
Murphy, no.
Murphy, no. Nash. Nash, aye. Nelson M.
Nelson M, no.
Nelson M, no. Nelson N.
Nelson N, aye.
Nelson N, aye. New. New, aye. Nor.
No, no.
Nor, no. Nornis.
Nornis, aye.
Nornis, aye. Novotny.
Devani, aye.
Novotny, aye. O'Driscoll.
O'Driscoll, aye.
O'Driscoll, aye. Olson. Olson, no. O'Neill.
O'Neill, aye.
O'Neill, aye. Pulowski.
Pulowski, aye.
Pulowski, aye. Purcell.
Purcell, no.
Purcell, no. Petersburg. Petersburg, aye. Pearson.
Pearson, aye.
Pearson, aye. Pinto.
Pinto, no.
Pinto, no. Poppy.
Poppy, no.
Poppy, no. Poston.
Poston, aye.
Poston, aye. Pryor.
Pryor, no.
Pryor, no. Quam.
Quam, aye.
Quam, aye. Richardson.
Richardson, no.
Richardson, no. Robbins. Robbins, aye. Runbeck.
Runback, aye.
Runbeck, aye. Sandell. Sandell. Sandsted. Sandsted.
Samstead, aye.
Sandsted, aye. Sauk. Sauk. Schumacher.
Schumacher, aye.
Schumacher, aye. Schultz.
Schultz, no.
Schultz, no. Scott.
Scott, aye.
Scott, aye. Stevenson.
Stevenson, no.
Stevenson, no. Sundin.
Sundin, aye.
Sundin, aye. Swazinski.
Swazinski, aye.
Swazinski, aye. Tabke.
Tabke, no.
Tabke, no. Tice.
Tice, aye.
Tice, aye. Torkelson.
Torkelson, aye.
Torkelson, aye. Erdahl.
Erdahl, aye.
Erdahl, aye. Vang.
Vang, no.
Vang, no. Vogel.
Aggie.
Vogel, aye.
Vogel, aye. Wagenius.
Wagenius, no.
Wagenius, no. Wozlowick.
Wozlowick, no.
Wozlowick, no. West.
West, aye.
West, aye. Winkler. Winkler, no. Wagamot.
Walgamot, no.
Wagamot, no. Zhang Jie.
Stone J, no.
Zhang Jie, no. Zhang Ti. Zhang Ti. Joachim.
Young T, no.
Joaquin, no.
Zhang Ti, no. Joachim.
Joaquin, no.
Joachim, no. Speaker Hartman. Speaker Hartman, no.
Aggie.
Green.
Ready? Where'd it go?
Green.
One, two, three, right there.
Keel.
Keel, aye.
Keel, aye. Creshaw.
Grisha, aye.
Creshaw, aye. McDonald.
McDonald, aye.
McDonald, aye. Sandell. Sandell.
I haven't voted.
Sauk.
Sauk, no.
Sauk, no. Sandell and Green, right? Green? Green. Green, aye.
There being 64 ayes and 69 nays, the motion does not prevail.
House Concurrent Resolution Number 1 being referred to the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration.